Hello everyone and welcome back. So in the last lecture we had started with the topic risk assessment and management of toxicological risks, in which we have seen exactly what is the meaning of risk, what is risk assessment, what are the different processes involved in it, and what do you mean by risk management, and what are the different elements involved under risk management, and how these two work in association with each other. Okay, so in today's video we shall continue with the actual process of risk assessment. Okay, so in brief we have seen what are the 4 different steps which are involved in the process of risk assessment. That is, you identify the hazard and you categorize that particular hazard, find out the ways and means by which the exposure may take place, and you can categorize that particular risk, or characterization of the risk is done. So accordingly there are 4 different steps which are involved. The first one is hazard identification, the second one is hazard characterization. Okay, hazard, it is the inherent property of or any substance to produce the adverse effect. Okay, so this particular hazard, it first needs to be identified. After that the characterization of this hazard has to be done. Okay, so this is usually done with the help of dose response assessment. The third step is exposure assessment, how exactly the exposure is taking place to that particular chemical. And lastly the risk characterization. Okay, so based on the results of this risk assessment, you need to go for risk management, that is how to control this particular hazard when any substance is introduced in the commerce. Okay, so coming to the first step of risk assessment, that is hazard identification. Okay, so as the name implies, in this step you are identifying the potential harm which can be caused by that particular substance. Okay, now how you can identify, what are the different steps which are involved in identifying the potential harm which is caused by a particular substance? So this involves the observation. Okay, you need to make certain observation upon exposure. You need to observe that particular species or the environment carefully for any kind of changes or appearance of any kind of harmful effects. Certain experimental work may also be involved. In the framework, again, we have seen all these points. So certain experimental work might have to be carried out. Animal experimentation might be required to find out the potential harm of that particular chemical in the animals, and then you can extrapolate the results to the human beings. One more way by which the potential harm can be identified is by retrieval of the information. Okay, maybe in the past this particular chemicals might have been studied, so you may have to retrieve the data or the information about that particular chemical, whether such type of tests have been done. Okay, or maybe depending upon the physicochemical parameters which have been studied about that particular chemical. So that may give you some idea about the potential harm which may be caused by that particular chemical. Okay, or certain information about the harmful effects can also be obtained from structure activity relationship also. If you have the details about the chemical structure of that particular substance, you can predict the type of interactions which it can have in the body. Okay, so you can predict the type of effects which that particular substance may produce in the body. Okay, so there are several in silico models also which are available. The computer based models are available to predict the potential harmful effects of that particular substance. Now coming to the sources of information. So we have seen that you have to gather the information about the toxic effects of that particular substance or harmful effects, potential harmful effects of that particular substance. So from where you will obtain this information? So what are the sources of information? So where you can get this information? We have talked about the retrieval of the information, right? A retrieval of the data from the certain sources. So what are these sources where you will get this information? So maybe you may get this information from the peer-reviewed articles in the journals. Okay, so certain study might have been done about that chemical, and it might have been published in the form of articles in the recognized journal. Okay, so such kind of information can be retrieved, but unfortunately this source of information is very much limited. Okay, because such kind of information may not have been published. Okay, maybe certain studies might have been done, or hazard assessment might have been done, but they might not have been published in such recognized journals. Okay, maybe the information is available with the investigator, but it was not published. Okay, so that is the limitation, because in the past the publication was not very much popular. Okay, so certain studies were being carried out by certain organization, okay, following the OECD guidelines, okay, or the guidelines which are derived from them. Okay, but the results of these studies might not have been published. Okay, so many of the persons, they regarded this type of information to be confidential. Okay, so they believe that it should not have been published. Okay, so at that time, in the olden days, the ideas were quite different than what it is, or the scenario was quite different than what it is in the today's world. Okay, so it's very difficult to retrieve such information because it was not entered in the database. Nowadays a lot of databases are available wherein whatever studies are being done, so these are published either in the reputed journal or these are available on the database such as Medline. Okay, so you can easily retrieve the data. Okay, but in those days it was not being done. Okay, so it's very difficult to retrieve such information. Sometimes some data might be only available with the sponsor of the test. Okay, for the matter of confidentiality, they might not have been published. Okay, but there are certain agencies which are working internationally to provide such assessment data. Okay, so certain literature is available through International Program on Chemical Safety, or in case of studies done on the cancer, it is available through the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Okay, so here a limited number of chemicals, these have been studied and the data has been made available through these international authorities. Okay, but in recent years there has been a lot of changes as far as publication of the findings is concerned. Okay, so a lot of development has taken place and publicity is being done. Okay, say for example through International Uniform Chemical Information Database, this is available. Okay, so it summarizes much of the information, okay, which is available now about the high production volume chemicals. Okay, so a lot of studies which are carried out, these have been compiled and made available. Maybe it will involve the older studies which were carried out, okay, and even the modern studies which have been done on that particular chemical. So such type of information is available through this IUCLID. Okay, even ICCA, that is International Council of Chemical Association. So this is also cooperating with OECD to help publicize such information about a lot of chemicals. Okay, so risk assessments which are done about a lot of, maybe about 1,000 HPV, that is high production volume chemicals, is being made available, okay, for information. Then the type of information. So these are the sources of information. So from where you can retrieve the data, where you can get the data. So that repetitive studies should not be carried out on that same chemical again and again. So that will avoid the repetition. So when it is already done, you should not again expose certain animals or certain species towards the same testing. So that will save the time, as well as it will also save the animals. So it will be ethically also correct when you gather such information when it is already available. Okay, now coming to the type of information. What is the type of information and how you can obtain this? So data which is obtained on the human health effects. Okay, so this will be obtained from the human observations, say from the case reports or epidemiological studies. Okay, or certain in certain situations human studies might also have been carried out. Okay, so data can be obtained from such human observations, or the information can also be obtained from the animal toxicology studies. Okay, so certain studies are carried out in the animals and then it is extrapolated in the human beings. Okay, or certain in vitro toxicology studies are also available. Even the structure activity relationship also will help in predicting the type of information, okay, or a particular information from that particular chemical, okay, or the probable risk which that particular chemical has when it is exposed. Okay, now the weight of evidence about such kind of effects which are seen. Okay, so these needs to be assessed. Now whatever data you collect or whatever data is available with you, okay, it needs to have a strong evidence. You should be very much confident about the data which you have collected. Even this data can be supplemented with toxicokinetic and toxicodynamic information about that particular substance. Okay, so this will help in improvement of the interpretations of the data. Okay, and even it will help in confirming the assumptions about, say for example, that particular test substance, how it behaves in the animal species. Okay, how best it is similar to that which is shown in the target species. So whatever effects it is showing in the animal species, okay, how best it can be represented as far as the effects produced in the human beings are considered or target species are considered. So you should be very much confident about the data which you have collected from the tests which might have been done or certain in silico studies which have been done. Okay, so you need to have strong evidence about the interpretations which you have made. Then coming to the evidence of harm to the environment. Okay, so certain substances may even be harmful to the environment. So you need to be sure about that particular chemical not producing much of harmful effects on the environment also. So that is also a subject of concern nowadays. Okay, so how you can gather this particular evidence of harm to the environment? So this can be done from the assessment of structure activity relationship of that particular drug or that substance, toxicity studies in the indicator species. So you can utilize certain species and you can carry out toxicological studies in such species, or studies using the microcosms or mesocosms. That is the these are the artificial setup of the environment which are done, and the study of that particular chemical on such setup in a limited area is done, and you study what are exactly the effects on the environment. So environmental miniatures are created and the exposure is done, and you can interpret the type of effects which that substance is showing on the environment, and then you can extrapolate this particular results. Even in certain cases field studies and field observations may also be done. So you can gather the information about the harmful effects on the environment. So this is to do with the hazard identification. And the next step in the process of risk assessment is hazard characterization. Okay, so in this particular step, it involves the identification of the type of harm which can be caused by that particular substance. Okay, so what type of harm may be produced? Like say for example, a particular chemical is producing skin sensitization, okay, or cancer. Okay, so what is the type of effects which are produced, harmful effects which are produced? Or this particular step also involves the characterization of the dose level at which this particular type of effects are produced. Okay, so what is that level at which certain effects are being produced? Okay, so dose response assessment is done in this particular step of hazard characterization. Okay, so what are the different types of harmful effects which may be seen? Now there are certain harmful effects, okay, say for example genotoxic cancers or germ cell mutations. So these are considered to be stochastic type of effects or quantal effects. Now what is the meaning of quantal effects? Quantal effects is something which is either present or absent. Okay, so it is not a graded kind of effect. Okay, it will not vary depending upon the dose or the amount of exposure. Okay, but because of exposure, either certain type of harmful effects may be produced or it may not be produced in certain species or certain animals and so on. Okay, so either they are present or they are not present in the individual. That is the meaning of quantal effect. Okay, now while you predict the sensitivity of a particular individual towards certain effect, okay, biological variation might play a great role. Okay, that is, there are chances that there are variations as far as the type of effect or the severity of effect which is produced by a particular chemical. Okay, so that will depend upon the sensitivity. Okay, so this is a very important parameter. Okay, so frequency of occurrence of a particular response in a particular population, this will depend upon the dose. Okay, so therefore a dose response relationship, that's very important to establish. Okay. Say for example, this is true for such substances which show variable effects depending upon change in the dose. Okay, so such type of effects, these are non-stochastic effect. Okay. That is, the severity increases progressively with the dose. So as you go on increasing the dose or with the continuous exposure, the severity of the effects, harmful effects which are shown, it goes on increasing. Okay. Now usually these non-stochastic effects, okay, stochastic effects is the quantal effect. That means either the harmful effect will be present or it won't be present in certain individual. But non-stochastic means what? It will be variable depending upon the dose or the exposure. Okay, the usual process which is involved in these non-stochastic effects is initially the particular individual or the cells will be normal. With the continuous exposure, your body or the system will try to adjust. Homeostatic adjustments will be done. Later on, with the further continued exposure, compensatory mechanisms will come into picture. Okay, there are chances of repair. Wherever possibility, repair will be done. Okay, and if it is not possible, further down, it may result in breakdown, okay, leading to maybe certain disability. Okay, and ultimately the death may also occur. Okay, so this is the usual process of damage which is seen in non-stochastic type of effects. Okay, now in most of the types of toxic effects, usually there is a threshold level of that particular substance. Now what is this threshold level? So threshold level, it is a level of exposure below which it is believed that there are no adverse effects. Okay, so there is a particular level of exposure, there is a particular level of amount of substance which is required to produce a particular type of adverse effect. Just like under the drugs we have seen when we study the dose response relationship. Usually in the initial small doses, the drug might not show the effect. But as you go on increasing the dose, there may be a minimum level which might have to be reached, before which the drug will not produce the effect. A certain plasma concentration is supposed to be reached, after which it will start showing the effect. Okay, so likewise in case of a toxic substance also there is a threshold level. That is a level of exposure below which there is no adverse effects which are seen. So such type of expression is done with the help of 3 levels. Okay, so or 3 levels of doses. Say for example NOAEL, that is no observed or no observable adverse effect level. The second one is lowest observed adverse effect level, and the third one is the benchmark dose, that is BMD. Okay, so these 3, now let us see what exactly is the meaning of these 3 terms. Okay, so NOAEL, that is no observed adverse effect level. Now what is this NOAEL? So this is the greatest concentration or the greatest amount of that particular substance which is found by experiment or observation, which caused no detectable adverse alteration of either morphology, functional capacity, growth, development or lifespan of the target organism under defined condition of exposure. Okay, so at this particular level of exposure, this is the greatest concentration or amount of that substance which shows no evidence of toxicity or adverse effect. Highest amount of that particular substance. Okay, then next term is LOAE, that is lowest observed adverse effect level. So this is the lowest concentration or amount of a substance which is found by experiment or observation, which can cause an adverse alteration of the morphology. So in the previous definition what we have seen, okay, this is the greatest level which caused no detectable adverse effects. So it is the greatest level of exposure at which no adverse effects are observed. But what is this? Lowest observed adverse effect level. So it is the lowest concentration of that substance which causes the evidence of the occurrence of certain adverse effects which we have seen. Okay, so this will be just above the NOAEL. Okay, so just above that is the LOAEL, that is lowest observed adverse effect level. So what is that concentration? The lowest concentration which is responsible for the occurrence of certain adverse alteration of morphology or functional capacity or growth, development or lifespan of that target organism. Okay, then the third one is the BMD, that is benchmark dose. So this is the lowest confidence limit of the dose which is associated when a given incidence of that particular effect is estimated from all the type of toxicity data which is obtained. Okay. Then there are certain acute toxicity testings are also done to identify the LD50 or LC50. That is the time of exposure. So LD50 also we have covered earlier exactly what are the details of the studies which are done. So LD50 is very popular procedure to determine the 50% lethality dose. Okay, so the dose which causes the death of the 50% of the animals which are exposed. Okay, so in the recent terms, apart from the LD50, EC50 is also determined for environmental purposes. That is the effective concentration for a named endpoint such as immobilization. Okay, so this may be used. Okay. Now, this particular hazard characterization. Now, what is the application of this hazard characterization? So, what is the outcome of this hazard characterization? Okay. So, usually there may be 4 purposes for which this hazard characterization is done. Okay. That is determining of a chemical. You can categorize a particular chemical depending upon the persistent, bioaccumulative and toxic. Whether it is a persistent or a bioaccumulative or a toxic substance, PBT. Okay, so categorization can be done, or whether that particular chemical is very persistent and very bioaccumulative. So you can categorize that particular chemical. So this particular information may be utilized for further handling of that particular chemical. So what are the safety aspects about this particular chemical? So if it is categorized in any one of these criteria, it can be potentially harmful. Okay, so this is the table showing the EU, that is European Union criteria for identifying particular chemicals as per these classifications. Okay, BPT criteria, that is whether it is persistent, whether it is B means whether it is bioactive, okay, and T means whether it is toxic. Okay, and VPVB criteria means what? Very persistent or very much bioactive. Okay, so now let us see how exactly the categorization of that particular chemical is done under PBT criteria. So when you categorize this particular chemical as belonging to P criteria, when the half-life of this particular chemical is more than 60 days in marine water, or more than 40 days in fresh water, or half-life is more than 180 days in marine sediment, or more than 120 days in freshwater sediment, then you can categorize this particular chemical under the persistent criteria. Okay, now when do you categorize it as bioactive? Okay, when the biological concentration factor, it is more than 2000. Now what is this biological concentration factor? So this is a parameter to understand the effects which are shown in the particular species as compared to its occurrence in the environment. Usually this particular biological concentration factor, it was developed as far as marine studies are carried out. Okay, so usually this is a ratio of the concentration of that particular substance in the marine species to the concentration of this particular substance in the water. Usually in the aquatic studies it was introduced. Okay, so when it is more than 2000, when this particular ratio is more than 2000, you can categorize it as a B, that is it is bioactive. Okay, whereas when you categorize this particular substance as T, that is toxic. Okay, when the chronic NOES, that is no observable effect concentration, when it is less than 0.01 ml per liter. You can imagine the concentration, it's very low, right? Okay, 0.01 milligram per liter. If this concentration shows no observable effect, no observed effects, then you can say that it belongs to the toxic category. What is this? This is the highest concentration of the substance which shows no evidence of toxicity. That means above this level there will be evidence of toxic effects or adverse effects. So you can imagine with very less concentration it is showing the toxic effects. Or if that particular substance is categorized as CMR, that is carcinogenic, mutagenic or reprotoxic. Okay, so these are the categories which have been described over here. Or if the substance is endocrine disrupting effect, if it has, okay, then it can be categorized as toxic. Whereas under VPVB criteria, that is very persistent and very bioactive criteria, okay, how you will categorize it? If the half-life is more than 60 days in marine life or fresh water, or it is more than 180 days in the marine or freshwater sediment, then you can categorize this particular substance as very persistent. Or if the biological concentration factor is more than 5000, then you can say that it is very bioactive. Okay, whereas this toxicity level, it is not applicable to this particular criteria. It categorizes as very persistent and very bioactive substance. Okay, so this is the EU criteria for classifying certain toxic substance. So if your findings, they give you the result in such a way that you can categorize certain chemicals as toxic substances. Okay. So this is one of the application of hazard characterization. The next probable use is classification and labeling. Okay. So whenever you identify that a particular substance is hazardous, so you need to provide that hazard information, right, in the setup. You need to pass on that information, okay, to the risk manager so that it can be further informed and utilized while handling that particular substance or chemical. Okay, so safety data must be provided, or whether that particular substance is hazardous, you need to classify and label that particular substance accordingly. So this could be one of the application of hazard characterization. Then the development of exposure standards by setting up certain information against maximum safe exposure. Okay, so you can label it accordingly. So what are the maximum safe exposure levels? Accordingly you can categorize certain chemicals. Also one more application is margin of exposure or margin of safety. Such type of information can be provided. Okay, so these are the applications of hazard characterization. Okay. Now when you are dealing with these simple experiments wherein the endpoints are very much clear, when the adverse effects are easily observable, you can categorize and classify such chemicals very easily. Okay. So for example, if you carry out certain studies which are deterministic, okay, or sometimes a more quantitative approach is seen. Okay, that is grading of certain chemical as very toxic or harmful. Okay, so usually when the study which is carried out, when it is deterministic, it is usually falling under the hazard identification. Whereas when quantitative studies are done, it is mainly involved under the hazard characterization. So here amount of exposure and it is correlated with the amount or types of effects or the severity of the effects which are seen. Okay, so this is very easy to classify when simple experiments are carried out with clear endpoints. But there are certain experiments which are quite complex, wherein endpoints are very much difficult to interpret or observe. Okay, so in such type of study, a simple deterministic statement, it may not be sufficient. Okay, so here the classification is based on weight of evidence of the toxicity. So such type of classifications are utilized for carcinogens, mutagens, or substances which are toxic for the reproduction. So classification of such type of agents is quite difficult, and there are different parameters how it is classified. Based on different parameters it is classified and it is grouped. or it is categorized. Say for example, carcinogenic agents. These are categorized or classified as group 1 when the agent is carcinogenic to human. When it is classified as group 2A when the agent is probably carcinogenic to the humans. It may be carcinogenic. It is categorized under group 2B when there is possibility of carcinogenicity in the human beings. And it is classified under group 3 when it is not classifiable as far as carcinogenicity to the human beings is considered. And it is categorized under group 4 when the agent is probably not carcinogenic to the humans. Okay, so this is how the classification is done. Okay. In certain situations, the basic classification is done as known human carcinogens. Okay. So here there should be a good evidence of carcinogenicity in the human beings, or it may be categorized as probable human carcinogen. Okay, so here a good evidence of carcinogenicity in the animals or some evidence about the carcinogenicity in the humans is available, or it may be classified as possible human carcinogen. So here there is a mixed collection of criteria. Okay, so usually when you categorize your carcinogen in such type of categories, usually what you are doing, hazard identification. Okay. Whereas hazard characterization may require much more detailed study, wherein you have to measure the potency of that chemical for producing such type of effects, adverse effects like carcinogenicity. Okay. So this finishes the first 2 steps in the process of risk assessment. This is the reference. Thank you for watching.